Welcome back to Pewdiepie. I'm Zui and I hope you enjoyed today's video. But before we get right into it, I'm obligated to remind you to click either the like or dislike button, commenting something down below, and of course sharing the video so more people can see and enjoy it. This is very important as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. I want you to know that your help is greatly appreciated. If you have any suggestions or ideas for a story, my Discord link is in my link tree that is down in the description, as well as my Patreon and Ko-fi for any donations you may want to send my way. Every cent counts. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Yuri Breyer, Second Lieutenant of the State Security Service. He had a calm, appealing demeanor, especially during interrogations. However, this was a mere facade. If his patience was tested, he would quickly become cold, irritable, and dangerous. He had a talent for interrogations. However, even he could fail. The man understood his limits, but often not the limits of other people. And in cases where even he didn't conjure up satisfactory answers, a subgroup of the secret police was called the Red Nobility. Their existence only talked about in hushed whispers, after a whistleblower gave the information of their activities to a man only known as Twilight, who then published it. And among its members was you, codename Red Queen. To Yuri, if the nobility was called, it was a great hit to his ego, though the fact they were somewhat known now did make threatening you or one of your colleagues taking over the interrogation a viable threat. However, the man sitting before him now, covered in bruises, multiple knocked out teeth and missing fingers, was unwavering. The man had sold important intel about viral research to the Vestalis spy network. It was however unknown what information specifically and to whom. Yuri's task was to figure this out. The two men had been staring at each other for an hour now. The SSS officer was at his wit's end with this one. Damn it. The guy didn't even have a family he could threaten. Coldly, Yuri snapped his fingers. In came another officer, carrying a silver plate. On it, a crimson-red phone, which he placed next to Yuri. The officer then plugged in the cable and stood behind the interrogator. Staring into his enemy's eyes, Yuri slowly began turning the dial. Instead of numbers, it had all letters of the alphabet on it. He started with the letter Q, then U, followed by two E's. It was then the man before him shivered. "Yes?" asked Yuri coldly. But then the whistleblower averted his gaze. Finally, the N was dialed. All he said was, "Room 404, before narrowing his eyes. Take as long as you like." The phone was then taken away, and Yuri left. Truthfully, he had never watched any member of the Red Nobility perform their duty. Come to think of it, he hasn't even seen them, once. Only heard their highly distorted voices over the phone. He retreated into his office, sitting down on his chair, folding his hands, thinking, waiting. It was then his phone rang. It was his sister, and immediately his mood shifted. She was wondering if he had time tonight, but what he was doing right now was sadly more important. But he couldn't let his sweet and wonderful older sister be disappointed in him being a no-show. And so he came up with a lie. Well, I can later. I met someone, so that's why. The moment he said that, he already knew that this was the second worst lie he ever told her. Oh, that's nice to hear. Yeah. I'll talk to her and, maybe it's a yes? You know what? Scratch that maybe. It's a yes. Yes, we're coming. This was bad. Oh, okay. I look forward to meeting her. I'm so happy you finally found someone. Oh god, what did he just do? In his panic to come up with an excuse, to be a little late, he mixed up his dark feelings with the lie. How was he going to get a date now? He couldn't ask anyone in the SSS, not when he was so close to a promotion. He'd look ridiculous. And as he hung up, a thought came to him. Well, there was one person in this building that was suitable. He gulped. Of course, he had never seen the Red Queen herself. Damn it, what if she was an old hag? What would his adorable sister think? As Yuri was thinking of even more stories, he didn't realize that he had left his office. Wandering. Not realizing that he was making his way to the observation room of room 404. Sir, stuttered a pale colleague next to the door. Are you abandoning your observation duty? Hissed Yuri. The man was clearly traumatized. I can't, sir. It's too much. Hell, not even Yuri got reactions like this from his interrogations. Fine then, I'll take over from here. The man grabbed his shirt. He was completely forgetting that difference in rank. But the cold stare Yuri was giving him, I didn't even shake the guard anymore. Please, for your own good, sir, don't. Angry, Yuri slapped the man away, and with a deep sigh, he entered the observation room. Strange, he huffed. There was no one here. Normally, there were two observing guards, taking notes. He then looked at the one-way mirror separating the interrogation and observation rooms. He furrowed his brows. There was a lot of blood in the room. And a bathtub. When did that get here? He thought. And then finally, a red arm lifted itself out of the bathtub. The man covered his mouth to not scream. The arm looked female, slender, as the thick crimson liquid covered her entire skin. Yuri's vermilion eyes widened, and he stepped closer to the window. Inside the bathtub was a vaguely human-shaped chunk of meat and bone. Next to it, submerged in the fluid, was the tender shape of an attractive woman, tenderly holding onto the flesh. A voice suddenly echoed from the intercom. Have you got all that, Roderick? The woman's voice was dead, devoid of all emotion. Roderick was the guard outside. No. He needed to step outside. I'm Second Lieutenant Yuri Breyer. I'm taking over. Yuri spoke clearly into the microphone. Huh. He must be weak of stomach then. I understand. It's not often I have to go this far. The information. You lifted yourself out of the tub, and Yuri blushed. It was as if your entire body had been painted red. Your hair sticking to your chest shoulders and back, somewhat covering your unclothed body. The informations have been delivered to a man named Twilight. The informations were of the location of the chemical lab and what I needed to do to find it. If I were you, I'd send more guards or deliver the goods somewhere else for protection. We do not want this research to get into the wrong hands. You stepped outside the tub. The smell of rust was stenching the room quite harshly. And there you stood, staring at your reflection, and also right into Yuri's eyes. It was his first time he had felt something like this. May I ask for identification? You tilted your head, slowly before responding. I am the Red Queen of the Red Nobility. Strange. Weren't you the one who asked me to get this information? How did you do this so quick? It was scary. What were you doing in the tub, if you don't mind me asking? I was merely holding onto him. He was in pain. I wanted to hold onto him until he passed away. To comfort him. After all, wouldn't you want to be comforted after one such as myself flailed away your skin? Yuri gulped. It's fine. I calmed him, I think. He stopped screaming once I held him. You blinked. I'd like to take a shower now, Lieutenant. Yes, he hushed. And then he watched you nonchalantly walk out of the room. Gasping, Yuri rushed outside. Through a door into the hallway you were in. Respectfully, or more frightfully, the people who were already in the hallway stepped out of your way. Some hiding themselves away in closets and side rooms. And the holding cells, with prisoners still in them. The men inside were staring at you horrified. These were hard-sodden criminals. Well, after all, they heard everything coming from room 404. The screams, the sounds of tearing flesh. Yuri was the only one who chased after you. As he stood before the showers, you turned to look at him, and he blushed. Curiously, you looked at him. Yes, Lieutenant. If you were his only hope, so be it. He bowed deeply before you. Please, if it's not too much to ask, would you please accompany me to visit my sister? You stood in front of your mirror at home. Your bleached white hair pulled back into a ponytail. With one hand you caressed your own cheek, wondering if it felt as soft to others as it did to you. Should you put on makeup? Slowly you opened your mirror. Behind was a small selection of brushes and powders. When you weren't covered in the liquids of your interrogation partners, you were scarily pale. Your body was lean and your chest well developed. You had been told that taking care of one's appearance was as important as the first incision into one's skin. You closed the mirror and very thinly brushed on some powder to give your face some color. To make it look less unliving. Once you were happy, you put on lipstick. The lieutenant had only told you when and where he'd pick you up, so he didn't know how fancy you should dress. Not that you had many options anyways. You decided for your simplest red dress that worked well with your white skin. Taking a step back from the mirror, you looked at yourself. Perfect. Like a porcelain doll. Just like you had been taught. In your civilian life, you worked at a daycare. There you wore a cream-colored shirt, blue jeans, leather shoes, and an apron. The fathers of the children always eyed you lewdly, while the mothers were clearly jealous. And the children? They loved you. But if they knew what you did outside of that, surely they'd be horrified. A nightmare you had very often, in fact. You took hold of a large black coat, dragging it behind your shoulders like a cape, before leaving your tiny apartment. Yuri was waiting for you in a suit and tie at a park only a short bus ride away. He looked at you awkwardly as he watched you approach him. I honestly thought you wouldn't come. You stopped right before him, staring straight into his unblinking eyes. Why? He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Because of our jobs? You interrupted. Yes. I see. Please, Lieutenant, if I make you uncomfortable, tell me. I have been trained to understand that I think different from other people, and act different as well. Yeah, about that, he said. Would it be okay if we don't talk about work on this, date? You blinked twice before responding. I see. Your sister doesn't know you're working for the SSS. Am I correct? Yes, he admitted. Don't worry, Lieutenant Breyer. I know of your credentials. I have read them over during my lunch break today. I assume you did mine as well. He blinked. I don't have clearance for those. Top secret. With your expression unchanging, you explained your civilian life to him. Honestly, he couldn't fathom how a woman like you could both be a kind mother to a bunch of children in a daycare, yet fulfill such a gruesome job on a daily basis. He blushed a little, before guiding you to his car. Inside, the two of you sat there for a moment, quiet as he was mentally getting ready for this. Lieutenant? Please, call me Yuri. He interrupted you, and you blinked. In public, I mean. Understood, Yuri. Your lips twitched almost unnoticeably, giving away an internal struggle. He narrowed his eyes. Is something wrong? You gave him a questioning look. Just my imagination. Let's get going. He turned his keys and the two of you drove off. So may I ask what this is all about? My sister, as you wonderfully deducted, has recently married and she has a child. And she doesn't know my job. I can sense a strange hostility. You are not angry at her for marrying him, but more at the man who married her. I assume you perceive it as her being taken away from you. Am I correct? Why were you the only person in the entire SSS suitable for this job? He was feeling very weird and he wasn't sure if he liked it. He stopped the car in front of a large building. The drive had been quiet and awkward. Like a gentleman, he opened your door for you. When you're inside, act like a girlfriend. You finished the sentence for him. Precisely. He still wasn't sure what to expect. But as he rang the doorbell, he looked over at you. There was suddenly a smile on your face, and he even noticed that you had taken his arm in yours. He didn't even realize it.
gulped. What would Yor think if she saw you? His heart pounded, both out of the strangeness coming from you and the anticipation of Yor. The door burst open, and the two of you ascended the stairs. "Hello," said Yor excitedly. You could feel a pull on your arm. Yuri was about to run off to his sister. However, the grip that had been light as a ghost on his arm suddenly became deadly tight. His heart skipped a beat as he was denied the immediate hug with his beloved sister. "You two look happy," said Yor with a kind smile. "Come in." "Thank you," you said happily. Next to the woman was a blond man with turquoise eyes, most likely the husband. You knew from the report that he was a psychiatrist, well-spoken and quite attractive. Behind them, looking from behind her father, was a little girl with pink hair. Strange. The moment her eyes had fallen upon you, her bright smile had ever so slightly faltered. You and Yuri were led into the family's living room, and a light conversation ensued. Yor bombarded you with questions that, all in all, were quite innocent. Where did you work? How did you meet? You had come to realize quickly that as long as Yor was present, however, that the lieutenant was working with only half of his brain. So you began to take charge of the conversation. He wasn't a terrible liar, sure, but when you talked about your first kiss, he made it sound a little too mundane, and that would definitely not fly over you. If this was meant to be a convincing display of a relationship after all. And you chuckled quietly. "Yuri, you're always so humble when it comes to emotions." You put a hand in front of your face to make your grin appear more modest. "It was a wonderful night. It was on a boat ride, actually. It was our third excursion together. Since the first date, he had been an incredible gentleman. He told me about your past, and that you grew up without parents. Such a shame, really, but you raised him well. He's a wonderful person, and I've never been happier." Yor blushed hard. "Oh, Yuri!" She leaned over the table and tightly hugged her brother. "I was so scared you'd be forever alone," she cried into his shoulder. "You've been so obsessed with taking care of me." Yor?" exclaimed her husband with an awkward smile. "It's fine. I guess it's something you have to get used to with the two," you said directly to him. The man, Lloyd Forger, smiled. "Yeah, you're right. And what about your past, if I may ask?" Twilight couldn't put his finger on it, but something was severely off with you. Your voice, your face, your emotions, everything was normal except your eyes. They looked so cold and uncaring. Dead, even. It made him feel incredibly uncomfortable. "I grew up in an orphanage," you said. "This was somewhat the truth, so you could easily build up your life from there." "I was always standing at the back end of things. Honestly, I didn't want to be adopted. Was probably my rebellious phase, I guess. My way of thinking made me believe that if my own parents didn't want me, then why would anybody else? The place was dreary and boring, and over time I became the eldest, so I'd say I'm good with kids, hence why, once I turned 18, I began focusing on becoming a daycare worker." "Interesting." Lloyd scratched his chin. That checked out with the intel he had on you. To a T. Almost too perfect. As of right now, I live in a small apartment. We haven't decided yet if we want to live together. Though, you looked at Yuri, whose face was as red as a tomato, while Yor returned to her seat, embarrassed. The question did come up. Your eyes met, and he blinked, realizing what you were talking about. He is somewhat against that, as we live quite far apart from one another, and he'd feel terrible inconveniencing me by making my route to work longer. Sadly though, my apartment is too small for 2 people, so that's out of the question as well. But we'll figure something out. You sighed sadly and leaned back, looking at your fake boyfriend with affectionate puppy eyes. His heart began to flutter. But why? Your relationship was fake, and his sister was right there. So why was he feeling something? Something he normally only felt for Yor. How was this still you? Outside just 20 minutes ago, you looked like the living incarnation of death itself, not to mention the stomach-turning display of this morning. If he didn't know better, he'd think you were worshipping him. Why did he kinda like that? During the entire conversation, Anya, the daughter, had been silently staring at you wide-eyed. The girl was secretly an Esper, and the moment she had laid eyes upon you, images of violence met her. And the entire time, every second, no, every millisecond, you were preparing to kill anyone in this room if they tried to jump you. In fact, it were so many scenarios at once that it made her head spin. But what frightened her the most was how, despite that insanity in your head, you were still able to follow the table conversation. Sure, she'd definitely have nightmares after this, but her curiosity was too strong and she couldn't stop raiding your mind. Like an interesting horror movie. Dinner was soon served. It were 3 meals plus dessert. The first one, the appetizers, were an experiment of yours. Lloyd apologized, and yet both Anya and Lloyd stared at you in disbelief as you just ate the seemingly inedible soup concoction. Yuri, of course, bravely ate through it for his sister's sake, and Yor somehow managed to gullet it down too. "It's delicious," you said, smiling, and that gained you stares from pretty much everyone. "What?" you asked. Did you say something obscene?" You blinked. Wait. You lifted your spoon and inhaled a bit of the soup's stench. Embarrassed, you put the spoon down and blinked. Damn it. You didn't have a fake story for that one. So you inhaled, quickly coming up with something. Okay, everyone, I do have to admit something." You looked at Anya. "Could you please leave the room? I don't want to cause you any distress." The girl deadpanned. If only you knew. But she just said, "Anya's the big girl." You sighed. Damn it. You would have taken the time she needs to leave to come up with something. In truth, part of your pain tolerance training to become what you are now, you had been forced to drink highly acidic chemicals. Your tongue was irreparably damaged, and you had practically no taste buds left on your scarred tongue. And all you could really taste was that the soup was very hot and salty enough for your damaged organ to pick up on it. So it was fine for you. Though thankfully, Yuri interjected. I warned her, yes, she wanted to be nice. I'm sorry, Yor, I put her up to that." Perplexed, you looked at your fake boyfriend, before turning your attention to the inedible soup. "Yes, I'm sorry." The rest of the dinner went normal, with a perfectly baked duck and vegetables in between. Noteworthy here was your technique in skinning your part of the duck. You're immediately realizing what technique you were using. Even though all you had was a fork and a simple dinner knife, you cut through the duck's skin like it was nothing, not damaging the succulent meat beneath, as you skillfully peeled it away using your fork. The horrifying realization that at the very least you must have had some assassination training like her. It almost made her gasp 1,000 questions, immediately spinning through her head. For dessert it was vanilla ice cream, and soon thereafter it was already time to leave. Anya needed to go to bed, and Lloyd seemed quite adamant to prevent both Yuri and Yor from drinking any alcohol, so there wasn't much left to be done. And as you were getting ready to leave, Yor addressed you directly, her suspicions getting the better of her. "Keep my brothers safe, got it?" There was something about the look she gave you when she said that. It was almost scary. Almost. Yet, judging by Lloyd's facial expression, it was certainly scaring him. Yuri, of course, was oblivious to it. You blinked and smiled brightly. "Of course, I will. He's the most important person in my life." Her eyes narrowed. This answer seemed to please her, before saying goodbye with a smile. And the moment the front door closed behind you, you let go of Yuri's arm, your smile turning back to your usual professional deadpan. "This certainly was enjoyable," you said. "I hope my performance as your fake girlfriend was to your liking, Lieutenant." "Lieutenant?" You turned your head to look at him. His face was flushed. He couldn't get the image of your loving puppy eyes out of his mind. They reminded him so much of yours when they were children. Queen, he said. He had called you Queen a few times during dinner. You had laughed it off by it being your pet name. Yes? Do you feel as if this night is already over? You blinked. Would you like me to continue playing the part? He was quiet for a moment. Do you like me? It depends. Would you like to continue a professional relationship between the two of us? Or is your interest to create a very unprofessional love affair between the two of us? He gulped loudly. I see. That's answer enough. I cannot say I share your feelings. I have no feelings at all for that matter. But if your order is for me to continue as if we were a couple all along from this moment on forward, I can certainly do that. I would of course return to my professional demeanor once we're at work. You would? He felt incredibly selfish in this moment. Yes. After all, you are my superior, a second lieutenant of the SSS. He gulped. Yeah, let's pretend a little more. He blushed hard. And just like before, it was as if a lever had been switched. You returned to his side, clasping his arm. You smiled at him, warmly. This had been a wonderful evening, Yuri, darling. The fact that he knew that you were faking it was forgotten the moment he looked at your face. Yeah, he said with mild excitement, his heart beating faster. And then you leaned up to his ear. Well, darling, I would hate to sleep alone tonight, you whispered. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to, he said with a dumb chuckle. But I do want to. Just be gentle with me. I never slept with someone before. If his brain already didn't shut off upon seeing your smile, it certainly did now.